And welcome back to In Session on the Jodi Arias murder trial. I'm Jean Casarez. We are broadcasting live from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. We are in the midst of this trial. This judge has given a short lunch hour for the jury, and we are expecting live testimony to resume shortly. Well, the jury makeup, there's a panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates here. They're listening to all of the evidence in this case. Now, to break it down for you, of those 18 jurors, 7 are women, 11 are men. They range in age from a man who appears to be really in his early 20s to several men of retirement age. Well, have you thought about this at all? Could those jurors empathize with Arias as she sits in the courtroom and as the defense tries to prove that the victim, Travis Alexander, used and abused her? We're taking a closer look today at the issue of jury nullification. Joining us, first of all, a foremost jury consultant and former clinical neuropsychologist, Dr. Jeffrey Boyll, is joining us live in Phoenix. Also back with us, criminal defense attorney Dwayne Cates, in-session contributor Joey Jackson, and in-session law enforcement analyst and contributor Mike Brooks. All right, the first thing we want to do, everybody, is to just look at the legal definition of what jury nullification is. It is, quote, a jury returns a verdict of not guilty, despite its belief that the defendant is guilty of the charge. The jury, in effect, nullifies a law that it believes is either immoral or wrongly applied to the defendant whose fate they are deciding. Dr. Jeffrey Boyll, jury consultant and former clinical neuropsychologist, you join us live right here in the Phoenix jurisdiction. Plain and simple, if they don't want to convict somebody, they don't have to, right? I believe in the jury system, but I've seen it. I've seen it all. And if you want to convict somebody, you definitely can find the evidence to do it. If you don't want to convict somebody, you can find something to hang your hat on to not convict them.
That's absolutely correct, and there's many famous examples of that. As you know, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, in his initial trial, was brought up on serious charges. It was clear that he had assisted in the suicides. That was against the law, of course, and again, he could have faced serious charges, but the jury determined they didn't agree with that law. They didn't agree with the punishment for what he had done, and so in that case, they acquitted him in the face of obvious evidence. And there are many cases, many people feel that the O.J. Simpson case, that some of that could have gone on. There are many cases I could go on and on where a jury has decided we don't agree with the law and therefore we're not going to follow it, or maybe more subtly, they determined that we want to reach a certain verdict that we feel is just, and therefore we're going to overlook certain evidence and enter the verdict that we feel best about, that we can sleep best about at night.
So, Dr. Boyll, let me ask you this, all right? The defense has not shown any evidence of domestic violence. We haven't heard about a mark. We haven't heard about a punch, nothing that Travis did to Jodi. But she's in that courtroom, and I've been in there, and she is small, she is frail, she is sinking in her seat. She cries. Much of this trial, she has cried. Can that cause a jury to empathize and feel sorry for her?
Probably not. Not under the circumstances. I mean, they could feel like this wasn't the great lover, not a great boyfriend, that maybe she was a shrinking violet. Does that justify shooting him in the face, stabbing him 27 times, slitting his throat? It's hard to find empathy for that. Now, again, we've had cases in the past, the Lorena Bobbitt case, if you recall way back when. For those of you that don't know, that case was a wife who claimed that she was abused and she was being controlled, and some of these same allegations. And then one night she went down to the kitchen and got a kitchen knife, as you may recall, and decided to do away with his penis. And so she cut it off, got in the car, drove, and threw it out the window. And that was a sensational trial. It went to the jury, and the jury actually determined that she did not act with intent, with a malicious intent. They found her guilty of a much lesser charge. And so this idea that a defense can work, that somebody, the victim, the perpetrator can be seen as the victim and therefore acquitted because of emotional abuse, and this idea that you can snap and there was nothing you could do to control it. That's worked before, and obviously in that case they felt sympathy for Lorena Bobbitt. Whether the defense can get the jury to accept that in this case under the circumstances and the heinous nature of the crime, I don't see that. Not what's happened so far. I just don't see it.
All right, then let me ask you this. What about to mitigate it down? Because the evidence of premeditation is there. I mean, the prosecution really had a tremendous case in chief. But we're hearing evidence that Jodi wasn't respected by Travis. She was called names. She was the one that was kept in the shadows because he just used her for sex and she wasn't the respectable girl. Could women on the jury not like that? Could they decide that, you know what, I could convict her of first-degree murder, but she went through a lot, and want to make it a heat of passion manslaughter? Again,
I don't see it because there's lacking evidence that she was in any way physically controlled. I mean, it begs the question, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't she get out of the situation? How many different options did she have? And was she really that psychologically coerced that she had no other option available to her?
And welcome back to In Session in the Jodi Arias murder trial. I'm Jean Casarez. We are live in Phoenix, and that was prosecutor Juan Martinez. He has shown such an aggressive approach with some of the defense witnesses. I mean, he has so much passion. But could his tactics sway the jury? Could it be a negative influence for the prosecution? How will it affect how they feel about Jodi Arias? Joining us once again, back with us live in Phoenix, is jury consultant and former clinical neuropsychologist Dr. Jeffrey Boyll, criminal defense attorney Dwayne Cates, In-Session contributor Joey Jackson, and In-Session law enforcement analyst and contributor Mike Brooks. Let us ask you, first of all, Dr. Boyll, you are here in the Phoenix jurisdiction. You are a jury consultant. You have worked with so many jurors, pre-trial, post-trial. Does it affect a jury at all in relation to the outcome of the case as to how an attorney treats the witnesses?
It depends on the witness. I mean, you don't want to beat up on a witness who the jury does feel sympathy for, and it also depends on their views on the case. If they don't agree with one side of the case, an attorney that's a real bulldog, that can turn the jury off. But in large part, jurors expect it based on what they see on law shows, on television. They expect, particularly in cross-examination, it's always such an interesting part of the trial. They really expect the prosecutor to go after that witness. I mean, there's different styles. I mean, there's a Perry Mason style and the Columbo style, and this just happens to be his style. I mean, he's obviously very aggressive. That's not necessarily going to turn jurors off, and I would assume if you are watching the jury behavior, they're probably very attentive. It's very hard to go to sleep during this kind of questioning while it's going on. So it does accomplish his goal, which is to make sure the jury is focused, and that if he gets a key admission, that the jury clearly has paid attention to it.
Dr. Jeffrey Boyll, let me ask you one more question. As a jury consultant, do you see that something like this affects more a female juror versus a male juror? This jury at this point, overwhelmingly male. We don't know what the deliberating jury will be because the alternates have not been selected yet. But who is affected more by this?
Well, I wouldn't want to stereotype. I mean, there are certain females who like that kind of style, and some that would be turned off by it, and the same with males. So I don't think it's as simple as saying males will like it and females won't. I think that's an oversimplification.
Dr. Jeffrey Boyll joining us, jury consultant from the Phoenix jurisdiction. Why do you think some attorneys do just go so strongly, so overboard in a way like that with a witness? Is it actually insecurity? Or what makes them be like that?
I think it's just personal style and a person's, even their personality. He may be like that if you went out and had drinks with him. So some people just have a different style. They like to take things more methodically, and then again, I guess I'd call it maybe more the Perry Mason style, that then the big climax at the end, having gone during, you know, a more calm session, a sequence of questioning, and this just happens to be his style. And I've seen it in all kinds of attorneys. They're just bulldogs, and they feel that that's the best way. They feel that's what's worked for them, and they're not going to change.
You know, the jury, of course, Dr. Boyll, is wanting Jodi Arias to take the stand and testify. I mean, we all want to hear from her, and we are waiting in bated breath. I mean, when they come back from lunch in just a few minutes and live testimony resumes, Jodi Arias could take the stand. We don't know. But the jury will also get an instruction saying that you cannot hold it against Jodi Arias that she didn't take the stand, if she doesn't. Does a personality like a Juan Martinez make a jury have a little more understanding of why someone doesn't take the stand, instead of thinking, well, she must have so much to hide and she can't tell us the truth?
Well, there's a lot of thinking going on there. I mean, some jurors may go along the lines of what you're saying, is that she wouldn't want to take the stand because he's a bulldog and he's going to chew her up and spit her out, and it's going to be too dangerous. But the jury might think, well, that's what her lawyers have decided. It's not really her choice. They do want to hear from the defendant, and as my colleagues will say, it is very risky to put a defendant on the stand. I mean, it's make or break. So if she takes the stand and he goes after her, and then the defense better hope that they have succeeded in creating some empathy for her, and if she breaks down in tears and he destroys her, then maybe they will feel sorry for her. And then he has to make that judgment call too. When should he back off? And so there's a lot going on there. I mean, this is the game of chess that goes on in a high-stakes trial like this.
You're right. Fascinating information. Thank you to all of our guests and everybody. We are waiting for live testimony to begin as this lunch hour concludes.